Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this triple row wire macrame bracelet. And this is what mine looks like here. So just with the materials that I've used. So I've just chosen to use two different colours and kinds of beads, but they're the same size. So I just chose to have one colour down the centre and kind of framed by the outer ones there. Obviously that's completely up to you what combination you would like. And then I've just attached a regular clasp, finishing off loops there at the end with the wire that's running through the whole bracelet. And this is then what it looks like on. You can see it sits really nicely on the wrist, gives a really nice impact there and effect. And obviously you have a clasp on the back side there to make it nice and secure as well, so it's not going to fall off. So if you want to learn how to make this wire macrame bracelet here, then keep watching. So these are the material that we're going to be using. First of all, we need our gauges of wire here. I have two different ones, but they're both the same regular round copper coated wire. And then I'm using a thicker gauge. This is a 1mm, so this is going to be, you could say, the base wire and be more the structure. And then here is a 0.4mm. This I'm going to use to make the macrame with, and also how we're going to add on the beads. And then as for the beads that I'm using, these are two different ones, but they are the same size. So they're both regular rounds. I'm just using faceted beads as well, and they're 6mm rounds. So you don't have to specifically use that size. It's just what I want to use for this. You could go larger or smaller. Then obviously it'll just change the look of the bracelet. But these are the same size, like I said, but I'm just using the two different colours to add a bit of interest. So that combination is also completely up to you. And then just to let you know a bit more specifically what I'm using here, these black ones are just black agate gemstone beads. And then these ones here are some copper coated, which is more of a reddish copper, but copper coated agate bead as well. And both faceted to add that bit extra sparkle. And then I just have my findings here at the end. So just a lobster claw clasp, some of my jump rings, and a bit of an extended chain. You don't have to use this. You can also make your own clasp with wire. That's completely up to you. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So then we'll need to cut some lengths of wire here. And what I have first of all is two lengths of my 1mm gauge. So that's a thicker gauge. And these need to be about 40 centimeters. So these are really just going to be the holding wires throughout. That's why they don't need to be that long. And then I have four lengths here of my 0.4mm wire of about 75 centimeters each. So these are longer because these are going to be doing the macrame work and also adding in the beads. So then we need to start working on the piece here, and what I'm working on is a macrame board, and it's just a mini one. It has all these notches all the way around. It makes it nice and handy for macrame. And then on the back I've taken all my wires there, put it through the same slot, and then just left a bit of a tail so we can use that at the end to finish it off. And then on the top here, all the wires in the same slot like I said. And then I've taken two of the 0.4mm gauge ones out, one to each side. But then the rest of them here I've taken down to the bottom and also put them in the same slot down there, just for now. Because we just first of all need to make some macrame to begin with before we get into the proper pattern, and also we start adding in the beads. So the first thing I want to do is make a few square knots here so we can get to the point where we want to start adding in the beads as well. And this is where we want to use the two working lengths of wire, so the 2.4mm here that is just separated out, and just make regular square knots. So I'm going to take my left one over and take the right one over that, and then underneath all the wires there in the middle, and then up through the gap here on the other side, and then pull that through. And just do a bit gently and carefully here. And then tighten that up. That's the first half of a square knot there. And then I'm going to take the one from the right side over towards the left, then take the left one over that, and then underneath again, everything in the middle, and up through the gap there on the other side, and pull it through. And this is going to be the other half of the same square knot, so then it makes one full one, completes it. And then just tighten this all the way up, nicely underneath the last one, and try and have like an even tension throughout when you're making your knots. And also what I like to do when I'm making macrame with wire, because working with wire, it's the same knots and all, but it's quite different than when we work with cord. So you just got to be aware of that, because obviously wire can kink and bend, and then it can be damaged or maybe even snap, so you want to try and avoid that. So that's why whenever I tighten my knots as well, try and keep an even tension like I said, but then I also like to kind of run my hands and fingers over it, because it will get kind of shaped, you can see there. So that's natural, but then what I just do when I'm tightening my knot, I just kind of run my fingers over the wire to smooth it back out again so it's ready for the next knot. So it just kind of helps get your wire keep your wire ready and in place to then continue doing the macrame work, and also minimize the risk of anything breaking or snapping. But then I just want to make a couple more square knots here in the exact same way, just so we have a little section that's going to then finish off the bracelet nicely. So just do that, and then we're going to reach a point where it's more the proper pattern and also the beads. So I've then made 4 square knots here. That's just the amount that I like. And then what I want to do is actually release my wires from the bottom slot, so the bottom of my board here, because we then need to just kind of get them into position. So what we need to do is the 2 1mm lengths, we need to separate them out a little bit. So I'm just going to pull them, they're naturally laying on each their own side really, so I'm just going to kind of pull them apart a little bit, just right below that last knot. And then what we need to do is kind of shape them, so we're going to have space in the middle for one of our beads. So we just need to get the right gap. So what I'm going to do is take some chain nose pliers here, or flat nose pliers, and then we need to just use them to get the shape. You can also then take your bead that you want in the middle and just lay it there in the middle, just so you have that to reference, to make sure you're kind of bending your wire in the right place. So just open it up like I said, and then I'm going to grab hold of the wire where I want it to bend, and then I'm going to keep hold of that and then just bend it downwards. So just so it comes straight back downwards again. And then we just need to do the same on the other side. So I'll put my bead there again, just keep hold of that, and then just place my plier just in the equivalent place there on the other side, and then bend that downwards again and get it as symmetrical as possible. So this wire also again comes just straight down, and that basically just creates that little opening in the middle that's going to fit the bead just perfectly. So there we go. So now I have the wires separated out, and what we can do then is reattach them on the bottom. Just going to get my 0.4mm wires here out of the way, and I reattach them on the bottom whatever slot they kind of fit into. And you can always move them around as well as you keep going. So reattach them on the bottom here, and then we reach the point now where we need to add in the beads as well, and also start using the other 0.4mm wires there as well in the middle. But the very first thing I just want to do is actually make a couple more knots, but just slightly differently. So I'm just going to do one side at a time here. So I'm just going to start on the left side, and then I take the wire that we used before, the one on the left side, the working wire, but then I also take one of the new ones there from the middle. So they'll probably coming out naturally towards their own side, so just choose the one furthest to the left. And then I'm going to use this wire on the left, the thick base wire, so the 1mm one, as the holding wire in this case. So I'm going to do another square knot with these 2 working wires. So I'll take my left one over that and just focus on that one, and then take my right one over that, and then by focusing on that one you just got to make sure you go down between the 2 in the middle, and then go underneath and bring it up in the gap on the other side, and then pull it through, and then that creates first half of a square knot around that single base wire, and tighten that all the way up. And this is basically just to kind of get into position more, get the wires in the right place so they fit better with adding in the beads. And then finish off this square knot by making the other half, starting from the other side. So it's the exact same square knot as I showed right at the beginning. Just like that. So that's that side ready. And then of course you want to do the exact same thing with the other side as well. So once we have one square knot then each side, we're then ready for the beads. So then to add the beads, like I said, I'm using the 2 different colours, so I want one colour down the middle and then one colour on each side of that. So the colour in the middle is going to be this one here, and what we need to do is add that onto both lengths of the 2 working wires, you could say, that are in the middle. So just coming naturally down like this. So what I'm going to do is just grab both ends, you can just do them together, and then put both of them through the bead in the same direction. So just like that, and then we want to drop this bead all the way down to right below where the knots are. It's going to sit just like that, just perfectly in the middle. And then we can just separate out the wires here a little bit again, to each their own side. And then on the sides, I want my black beads, so I'm just going to add one bead on the outer working wire there, and then one bead on the other side as well in the exact same way. So it's going to sit like that and create that pattern. So now to kind of cage these beads in and get on to the next step, then we need to make some more knots. So like I said, just separate the middle wires out coming from that middle bead, one to each side. And basically now we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did before the beads, which was making the single square knot on each of the holding wires there in the middle. We just want to do that exact same thing again. So that means I'm going to just start on one side at a time. I'm going to start on my left side again, taking the outer wire, bringing it over the holding wire there, and then I'm going to take the one coming from the middle bead, just one of them, over that. Make sure you go down between the two holding wires, underneath there, the one that we're focusing on, and then up on the other side. So it's the exact same square knot, and then tighten it. And this also just working with wire with macrame, it's a matter of being a little bit more aware of how the wire works. So like I said, the knots are the same, but obviously the wire reacts differently than the cord does, so just avoid any bends or kinks in the wire. But then tighten that, and you can see that then also tightens the beads in place nicely, makes them stay there. Then obviously we just have to make the other half of the square knot, just like all the other times. So start with the opposite side, and then make the other half of it. And there, I have a little loop. If I just kept pulling at that, that would turn into a kink. So just make sure, if you see that and notice it, to undo it before you just pull at it. Because then you lessen the likelihood of weakening the wire. So then we just tighten, I just want to tighten the first half again, before I go in and tighten the other half. Just like that. So we have one square knot there again, underneath the beads. And then of course we do the same on the other side. So the other wire from the middle, and then the wire from the other side. And just do another square knot here, around the base wire, or the holding wire, on that right side. And like I said, these knots are basically the exact same that I just did just before the beads. Now we're just using them to also cage in the beads here. Make the other half. Just like this. Tighten that up. I always like to just tighten the first half first again, before I then completely tighten the other half of the knot. Just like that. And then I'm just taking the middle ones kind of straight down here then, because they're now ready to then have the next bead added onto them. So I just bring them straight down in the middle, and then grab another bead of that colour that I want in the middle, just like that one up there. Do the exact same thing, so grab both wires, find the ends, and then put both ends through the same bead in the same direction. So just find the hole, there we go, and get it all the way down, so that's now below the previous two square knots that we just did. It's going to sit right there in the middle again. And then of course we also need the beads on the outer sides. So in my case here, that's the black ones. So I take one of them and add that to the outer wire on one side there, and then the other one to the wire on the other side. So here we just have one wire going through each bead, and the middle one has two wires going through it. There we go. So now the beads are in place and ready, and then I'm going to bring them down, and then you can see we're pretty much in the exact same position now as we just were up there. So that means the middle wires get separated out again from that middle bead to each their own side, and then we want to just make another square knot around each of the holding wires there, the thick ones in the middle, in the exact same way. One on each side, one side at a time. So just one knot there. And then you basically just keep doing that. That's the pattern itself. Keep building this until you reach the length that you need. Obviously taking into account when you're measuring your length, you have a little bit at the end, which we're also going to do on the other end to finish it off equally, but then also whatever clasp, the space that your clasp is going to take up. So just take that into account when you measure the length here to make sure you get the right length for your bracelet. So now we reached all the way down to the other end here, and I've reached the length as well for the midsection that I want. So now we just need to finish off this end the same way that we basically started out. So just so it looks nice and even on both ends. So what I've done is the two middle working wires here I've just brought into the middle as if we were going to add another bead. But instead of that, I'm just bringing them to the middle and I'm adding them back to that slot on the bottom there. But then what we need to do is also do the same with the two holding wires. So I'm just going to be releasing them, and then we want them kind of graduating inwards towards that middle again with the other two. So you can use pliers or you can kind of bend them inwards. Same if you remember at the beginning, we made that angle to get them to sit nicely and fit with the beads. So just bend them inwards here, and then I'm going to take a pair of pliers and just grab hold of that and then have it come back out straight again in the midsection, just so it sits nicely. And then the same with the other side, in towards the middle first of all. And then just need to get it kind of even with the other one. Then I'm going to take my pliers here, grab hold of it, and then just bring it back outward, or downwards rather. And then just if you need to adjust them, you can do. I just want them to match up a little bit better here, because I want to make sure that my knots here are going to sit in the middle, because it's kind of the holding wires that dictate that, especially with the working wire that we're using in such a fine gauge, and obviously the 1mm, the holding wires are such a thick gauge. It's going to be the thicker gauge here that kind of dictates what you can do with the knots with the thinner gauge. So I have them in the middle now, and then I'm just going to place them back in the slot, the same one down here, and just get them around the back and get them out of the way. So there we go. And I have all my wires except for the two working wires that we also started out with down all together in the same slot again. So now basically all you want to do is make some square knots around all these, just when we started out as well, to finish it off in the same way basically. So just bring over one side, just keep starting with the same side just for consistency, and then make the first half here a square knot. So we're just making a square knot here, tighten that up in the exact same way as we started out and we've done throughout as well. The other half of it, bring it underneath, make sure to catch all of the wires in the middle. You go underneath all of them, so the wires, obviously they won't kind of be incorporated into the bracelet. Just like that, and tighten that, and there we go. And now I'm just going to be doing the same amount of knots as I did in the other end, just again to keep it consistent. So just do that, and then all that's really left is finish off the ends. So here is then the finished piece, the midsection here with beads. So all I have to do, like I said, is finish off the ends. So the way that I'm going to do that is first of all obviously to get rid of the wires here, the excess wire, but also to then make a loop on each end and then use the findings. So that's just the way that I'm going to be doing it. First of all, I want to get rid of my 0.4mm wires. So I'm going to start with the ones that are running through the macrame first of all, they're coming out of the end. So not the ones that I made the macrame with. Just take one at a time here, and we have the two thicker gauges, two thicker wires there. And what I'm going to do is take one of my 0.4mm and then go around just one of them base wires there. So wrap it around just once, push it all the way down. Then we're going to take the other one that's coming through the macrame and then also go between them and wrap it around the other one and just push it all the way down. And then what we want to do is wrap it here just a couple of times on each side, because the ideal way to finish off weaving wire like this, which is what it is to wrap it around a single base wire. It's more secure than, say, wrapping it around both. So that's why I'm just doing one thinner gauge wire around one thicker gauge wire, and then do the other one here and go around the other one. So just kind of swapping from side to side, just a couple of times like that, and that's secure enough. And then to finish them off, I want to make sure, obviously we need to cut them down here, and I want to make sure where I cut them is going to be so the little end of the wire that's going to be left on the piece is going to basically end in between the two base wires, you could say. So I'm just going to cut that down, just like that. And then I just want to get a pair of chain nose pliers here, because always when you cut off wire you just want to make sure to tuck in the very end, because if you run your finger over it you can feel it's kind of sticking out and it's a bit scratchy. So just tuck it in, and then it'll go in between the two thicker gauge wires there. Just flip it around and do the same on the other side. So wrap it over the front and then cut off the excess. So we have just that tiny little end left, and then take your chain nose and squeeze it down, just like that. So that's them two wires finished off nice and neatly as well, also as it blends in nicely. So now I'm going to finish off the other two. So these are actually the two that made the macrame, so the working wires. To do that, what I want to do is just have a look. Your knot kind of goes in a certain way, so your wire is kind of coming out to each their own side from the knot. So I just want to follow that. So you have a little loop going across the top on one side of the wires here. So I want to make sure to bring the wire around in the direction so it goes against it, so not on top of the loop, because it kind of makes it a bit bulkier. So bring it around, and then also the other one is in the same direction. Bring around the other side, and then basically I want to do the same thing here. So I'm just going to go down between the two base wires, you could say. So I'm just wrapping around a single one, and this one I'm coming up between them, and again swapping from side to side, kind of just doing one wrap at a time here. And over to the other side again, and push it all the way down, and then this side again, just like that. And that's sufficient as well. So to get rid of those the exact same way, make sure they kind of wrap across, so when you finish them off, cut them down, the end is going to lay pretty much in between the two base wires there and get tucked away nicely. Just to make sure to squeeze that in, and then put your finger over it, and if you can't feel anything then it's fine. If you can, you might just want to squeeze it in a bit more to make sure you just can't feel it, because then it won't really catch on anything either, which obviously is important when we wear it. And the other one, same thing. Cut that off, and then just tuck in the end, just like that. So that's now all the 0.4mm wires. So what was the working wires throughout finished off. It looks like that. So all we have to do now is use the base wires here to then make our loop. So what I'm going to do is grab my ends here, and I want to kind of just get rid of one of them first of all and just use one to make the loop. So what I'm going to do is just take it and bring it, just start going underneath. I'm going to be holding on to this little macrame section and where I finished off the other wires, just so it doesn't kind of twist and move around too much. But then I just want to coil this around the other one that's then sticking straight up, just to finish it off securely. Really, mainly that's the reason. We can cut the excess off. So just wrap it around here, nice and kind of tight and neat coil. What can also really help is to use pliers, because it is quite a thick gauge, just to make sure it goes tight against around the other wire there. So just wrap it just a couple of times is enough. Each wrap there just above the previous one, something like this. And then I kind of choose a side that I want to be the back, where I want to finish off. the wires, and then I'm going to get my cutters and cut off the excess like that. And then again I'm just going to grab my chain nose or flat nose and then just make sure to squeeze that end in so it's not slightly sticking out or anything. Again, make sure to feel it. So there we go. So now we're down to just having that one wire left, which is the one we want to use to make the loop with. So how I'm going to make the loop is take my flat nose, and then we need to, I like to kind of put my piece to the side and then I grab onto the wire from there because I want to make the loop so it kind of lays flat from the front. So I grab my wire a little bit above where I just made those wraps, so we have a little space of bare wire there, and then I take that and bend it backwards so you get an angle in there. And then I like to use my 6-step bar making pliers. Here you can also use round nose pliers. I just prefer these because you can choose what size loop and you make sure it's the same size every time. So I'm just going to take the second smallest one, place that right where I put in that angle, and then bring the tail of the wire back across and around to then form pretty much a full circle, and around the front across the top there. You can see the circle from the front, which is why I wanted the loop as well to lay flat, so I did it from the side. Then I grab my flat nose again and I like to place them on the loop to make sure it stays in its shape, because we then need to take this tail and wrap it around to fill in that little space that we left from the previous wrap up until we started the loop. So basically this is a wrap loop. It's also much more secure, so just wrap it around nicely just until you filled in the whole gap and it meets up with the wire below it, so the wrap's below it there. Coming around to the back, again you can use your pliers to help squeeze it tight, and then I just want to finish off this as well. So just cut off the excess and just make sure to squeeze in the very end. You can't feel anything, then it's fine. And there we go, we now have a loop on that end, and obviously you want to do the exact same thing to both ends. So once we have this, then we need to then shape it into the bracelet shape, then obviously also attach your findings right at the end. So then to shape your bracelet here, you can either take something that has the size and the shape and kind of fold it around it, or you can just use your hands and fingers. And then what I like to do is kind of start from one place and then gently put curves into it. So don't go into one place and make it bend, because that'll make it out of shape. But just gently go from side to side across of it, and then you gradually get more and more of a curve into it, until obviously you're then happy with the size and the shape. So just keep going across, working your way, getting the ends closer and closer together. You can get a really nice fitting one. Now personally what I prefer is to make mine more oval shape, because I think that sits better on the wrist. Both more comfortable, but also it doesn't have a tendency to then like roll around the wrist like say round ones could do sometimes. I feel like the oval ones work better for that. So just get them close here. And then obviously when we're about there, I'm going to use the clasp that I've already attached. And then you have a nice and secure finished bracelet. You can obviously use a different kind of clasp as well if you want to, but that's then what it looks like. It gives a really nice effect and quite impactful. Obviously it all depends on what beads you use. You can use a vast array of shapes as well and sizes. You can use smaller beads and even larger ones depending on the look you want, or even different shapes, so maybe rondelles or even bicones you could try. So that's what it looks like, and it'll give a really nice and different impression. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial here for this macrame bracelet with wire work. But then, thank you very much for watching.